I am R. Wayne Woodson, educator, consultant, writer, speaker, minister, and entrepreneur. A journey that started in Detroit has landed me here in the city of Atlanta. Dr. Carter G. Woodson once said, "If a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated." I have dedicated my professional career to promoting the work of Black Americans, to ensuring affordable and equitable educational opportunities, and fighting so that all Americans in this country have equal rights under the law. Although the journey has not been easy, I am proud to do the work that I do. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dean Talk. I am R. Wayne Woodson, the host. I am excited about today's show. I have Dr. Jame'l Hodges, who is going to be joining me. We're going to have a really in-depth conversation about his company, what he does, how he impacts education in America. And so it's going to be, a unique and interesting conversation. I am very excited that he's not just a colleague, but a friend. So if you have questions today, please make sure you put them in the chat box. This is streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, and so that you can join in and be part of the conversation. Dr. Hodges, how are you?
Good morning. How are you, my brother?
I am good. It's early for me on a Saturday, but I am good.
Yes,
I have these sessions for the next 6 weeks, so we'll pray that I get up every morning. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for asking.
So, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, my name is Jame'l Hodges. I am a native of Long Island, New York. Was born in Amityville, where the horror was created. And I'm a first-generation college graduate of Virginia State University and HBCU in Petersburg, Virginia, founded in 1882. I went on to receive my master's degree from Florida State University, Go Noles, in the early 2000s, and then my doctoral degree from the University of Southern California. My experiences at the HBCU space really prompted me to want to give back to those who are less fortunate, to those who are seeking education and leadership. And so, I love working in higher education. It really made me want to go into student affairs and higher ed. I'm a proud father of a college senior, Jame'l Hodges, my son. And it's really excited to be here with you today.
Wow, I don't know, a parent of a college student. I don't think you're old enough to have a college student.
I'm old.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. So we're going to get right into it. What is Jamel'Elevate? We see these posts that you make all over social media, and we see the website, and we see the photos, and we see you speaking at all of these places. But what is it? Tell us something about it.
Sure. So Jamel'Elevate is a play on my name, Jame'l, and the word elevate. And I mixed the words together when I was creating my personal email address some years ago. Back in the day, you have names that you may not want to use as an adult for your email address. And so I knew how to change from my collegiate Gmail to something a little bit more professional. I thought, Jamel'Elevate sounds great. And so I played around with that. At the time, I believe I was working at Lehigh University and really working to really just push my name out there to provide some leadership for college students. And at the time, I was one of the first participants of NASAP, which is an HBCU leadership consortium similar to health, but for students. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, we had that program. And so long story short, I created my email address and started, how can I give back? And so one year I presented at NASAP. And then from that point on, HBCUs, PWIs, MSIs, HSIs, et cetera, began to reach out to me to really have some type of curriculum. And so Jamel'Elevate is unique. It's not lecture based. It's very energetic. It's interactive. I use experiential learning curriculum to really engage students in public speaking, branding, networking, leadership development, risk management, student elections. It just runs the gamut for all that we do in student affairs. And so it really was created to create a space for college students to really be engaged in some out the box learning. But then I realized I needed to also tap into some of the K-12, and so now Jame'l, in short answer, is a educational, motivational, and uplifting opportunity to engage K through 12 and college students in experiential learning.
I mean, we certainly need that because, I tell people all the time, there's never enough staff to do all the work.
Right.
Like, I don't think there's any school, be it a PWI or HBCU, that says, oh, we're overstaffed and we have more than enough people to fulfill our mission.
Right.
Usually we need some extra help right here. So, I mean, I think it's a really good thing. And I mean, I have watched some of the sessions that you've done at schools and whatnot. And what interests me is that the students are enjoying it. And, that is not always easy for college students. So what are some of the tools you use to keep people engaged?
So I really believe in the experiential learning in terms of having them get out of their seats and actually doing things. So example, if I'm talking about the power of communication, I may play the telephone game. If I'm talking about unity and really working together as a team, I may make them do some activity where they have to come together as one whole group and then break up in smaller parts. I believe in moving and movement and moving around. Students of color, and especially males specifically, really need to get out of their seats and really interact and communicate and connect. And so I really use some of the research and some of that as a baseline to create some of the curriculum. And so thank you for asking that question. But I think I'm definitely higher energy all the time. And I think because I'm willing to meet students where they are, those who are not comfortable or shy, who don't want to speak, I don't call them right away, but I find ways to assure that every single person in the room is involved in the activity in some kind of way. And it doesn't always have to be verbal. So I think that's a way to get the students connected. So thank you. It's been a blessing. It's been great. It's been a great ride with Jame'l.
Well, I mean, people are hiring you, so that's always a good sign.
Right. Yes, sir.
So you touched on something that, is one of my areas of research and work, and that is, Black males in education and our students. If I brought you in to do a workshop, if I was at an institution specifically, and I said I have a group of young men who we're having challenges with, who really are not engaged, who are having some academic issues, what would you do if we brought you in? Like, how would your company impact that change?
Well, first, I would want to find out some of the concerns that you have with the students. What are some of the background issues that they're facing, obstacles? Is it academic? Is it finding a place of belonging? Is there racial tension on the campus? Is there low self-efficacy? And so I think really trying to find out what the background story is for the students, for most of them. And then I would design the curriculum to meet the needs of those students specifically, without saying what the concerns are, of course. And so that's really how the training is created. I work one-on-one with the person who's hiring me to come to the institution. And I ask background questions. I want to know the culture of the institution. I want to know what are some things what are some challenges that face those men of color at your institution? It may not be that the students are at fault or that they're lacking of something. It may be that the cultural environment may not be conducive for the learning and engagement of those students. And so I find out, what is the percentage of men of color on the campus? Are most of them involved in sports? Or are they involved in leadership activities outside of athletics? Is there a multicultural office or a place for them to feel free? And so I try to find those things out first, and then I build the curriculum around that. But I would definitely want to make them feel comfortable. I want their voices to be heard. I want them to know that they are supported. And then I would also engage in some of the background research. I did my dissertation on the impact that pre-college outreach programs have on Black male success. And so high expectations, family support, having a mentor who looks and seems as if and relates to those students are so key. And so I think I represent that in so many ways, being a former athlete, being a member of a fraternity, an HBCU and PWIs. I feel like I'm really able to relate to the students in a unique way. And so I would use all that energy to connect to the students and have them do some silent activities, some speaking out loud activities, some things that I know all men of color have in common, from upbringing. I would bring those things up as a simulation activity, just to kind of get them grounded and connected to the activity. There's a lot of work behind it.
I mean, that's funny. I always tell people, folks don't see the work. Like, no one pays to see the work, but things that look easy often are not.
Right. A lot of connections, communication.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, it's not easy to come into an institution, quote unquote, as an outsider and say, you know, I'm here to make change. That is not always received well, especially at
Right.
some specific institutions. And so, I
That's
mean, you know, I commend you on that work. So, how do you impact the change without those in authority feeling challenged?
Well, I believe that I want them to be a part of the process, and so I give feedback. I give reports back to the person who hired me. Typically, the dean of students, the director of student activities, the VP for student affairs, the president of the institution, or the agency, the camp, the athletic coach, you know, whatever it may be. And so I'll give that feedback to them. But you know, the feedback comes from students, from the students' testimonies. So they answer questions. I say to them, how do you feel about your institution? What is something that make you feel happy here? What makes you feel disconnected here? So I'm not giving the information. I'm asking pertinent questions that really leads and lends itself to finding out what some of the concerns are. And I give that information to the university. I give that information back to them, of course, and I do an evaluation and an assessment, of course, as well. But that information is really helpful for the students. Number one, to reflect on their experiences, but think about being a dean of students at an institution that may not be connecting with students of color. And you have this data, pages and pages of testimonies from the students, like a live focus group with documentation telling you what the concerns are. I mean, and so that's what Jame'l Elevate provides as well.
You brought up something in your last statement that I always discuss with people, and that is viewpoints on our Black male students. I think you brought up something important, that a lot of them want to be expected to do great. And I think sometimes we put them on the back burner and just like, I'm glad they're here. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts on the general views of our Black male students across the academy?
Yeah, that's powerful. I think we have to really, I've been working on changing the mindset of students that I engage with, whether it be members of my fraternity, other fraternities, my son, his friends, students, those that I interact with in the community. I think that there's definitely something called a stereotype threat. Phil mentioned that back in, I believe, the 80s. It's been a while since I did my dissertation, but I believe it was in the 80s that he provided this education that there's a threat placed against men of color to act in a certain way. And we either dumb down or label inappropriately the students, these male students of color, in classrooms. And you see it happening now with police and the shootings and the killings and the fear that people have of a Black face, a brown man, you know. And so these things are so important to know about. And so that's the research response. My heartfelt response, though, is that we're taught at a young age that being a leader is not masculine, it's not strong, it's for girls, and it's feminine. And you know, I remember being a child and raising my hand to be a line leader, you know, in kindergarten to be a line leader. It's like, oh, pick me. I want to be the line leader. I want to throw the trash out. I want to erase the board. That's accepted, and it's great. When you get to middle school, somehow the paradigm shifts, and raising your hand and volunteering is not what men do. It's not what men of color do. Sitting back and being cool and kind of being quiet and being back in the cut is more accepted. And we fall into that. And then not again until you get to college or a job, a professional job, does pick me become the norm again and become acceptable. And so in that space, in that developmental space, it's important to recalibrate ourselves and really think about what energy we're giving off. Think about how many men of color have mentors or people who look like them in their classrooms. And so those things are so key and so important. You know, when you begin to grow up, you start looking at gender and ethnicity and race and how you're different. We learn that through student development theory, right? And so that's a space when people start changing how they act and how they interact. And so that's my answer. I think it's important to encourage men that just like it's okay to be the best in a sport or in a program or in a music, you know, performance, or you know, a youth step show. It's okay to be that great and have that energy in the classroom as well. As they say, keep that same energy. Keep that same energy in the classroom as well. I think that's so important, to be leaders in all aspects of our lives.
So, two things I want to shout out: Dr. Hinton, who's watching, and Dr. Robertson, who also went to Virginia State. So he's a longtime friend of mine. So
Hell,
he's over
hey.
here giving you a shout out. So when I think about black males like teachers, someone posted a couple of weeks ago, like, when did you have your first black male teacher? I did not have my first black male teacher until I got to high school.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, you bring up something that's interesting, that we emulate things that we see. And I think it's so interesting now, like, when I go to places and I'm with colleagues or friends and people are like, you all have doctorates?
I know, we're like dinosaurs.
Right. And they're just so shocked. Like, I have a Caucasian colleague who's a longtime friend of mine, probably one of the people I respect the most. And she's just like, that's just not what people expect. Because I was out with her one time and somebody said something, or some student I knew came up and they were like, you're a college professor? I was like, yeah. And the woman just stood there looking at me like I was some kind of, strange being from another planet. Right. And that's, my friend was just like, they're not used to that.
Right.
If you were robbing us or something, then they wouldn't think twice.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're an educator, is shocking to people. Right. So when you think about ways that just general people can begin to support you in this change, just different viewpoints, what were some suggestions that you would just give to other people who, it has to be a community effort to make this change. So what are some thoughts or suggestions you have?
Well, of course, the first thing I would say is education. I think we have to be educated about the issues that our people are going through. I think we have to be vigilant and engaged and active and give back to the community. I think that you really can't help someone if you don't know their walk. And so I think that's why service learning and community service and volunteerism is so important, especially today, to really not say, I'm going to feed the homeless. I'm going to feed the hungry. I'm going to give clothes to the homeless. But why are they hungry? Why are they homeless? Right. So that education is important. So my response would be that I think it's important to really communicate, to be educated, to be open to conversations, and to encourage students of color to speak up and to provide them with resources that they need to be successful. We have to provide students with resources to be successful. Student support services, we have to have wraparound services for our students in K through 12 and in higher education. It's important to provide those students with that. I know that back in the day in grad school, there was a theory, Sanford's theory of challenge and support. And that theory talks about the importance of, don't just give a student support. Don't just give a student challenges, right? That's important to give a challenge. If you're going to challenge me with 40% of your energy, you have to give me 80% of support then. We should almost double that much support of when we give someone a challenge. We know that challenges make you grow. Yes, it's important to be uncomfortable, but we have to also be able to have a safety net to catch people when they fall and to provide them with support to get back up again and push them forward stronger. And so I think that's what I would say, is really to do the research and really seek out resources for students that you're trying to engage with and assist. That's really, really important. And hire Jame'l, hire you. Look at some of our leaders who are doing the work out there, who really are culturally competent and aware of ways to engage these diverse populations of our students.
So I know people are wondering why I'm looking around so much, and just so everybody knows, this is our first time using this new streaming software. So while I'm doing this interview, I'm just making sure everything's going right. Dr. Hinton just commented that he didn't even have a black male instructor until college. And I think that really impacts our young people greatly. The fact that and I'm just going to use, black males because that's my demographic that I work with the most. Their schools are already underfunded.
Yes.
Teachers are clearly underpaid. When I look at some of the data from school systems around the country, and there are people that do trash collection that make more than some of our educators in some of these cities, it would be challenging for most people to be fully invested unless you are just a core, like the inside of you is an educator. If you are making $35,000 a year and you have a family, that is a struggle.
Definitely.
So I want to ask you something that, I'm always at this battle with people. And that's this concept that college is not necessary. I had a colleague of mine, and we had a huge argument the other day because he's like, people can be successful without going to college. And I said, yes, they can. I said, but if we deter all of our young people from going to college, there are professions that require degrees. We will have no lawyers, we will have no doctors, we will certainly have no judges. So some of the core jobs, you can't be an educator without a degree. So there are some core positions. So what are your thoughts on, this view that now, a lot of people across the country are discouraging young people from going to college?
Yeah. Obviously I'm going to go for the college answer. I believe now, whether it be community college and or 4-year institution or 2-year institution, now that depends on the individual and their skill set and what they need financially, educationally, developmentally, mental health wise. But I definitely am a true supporter of the college experience. I have plenty of friends from New York, from growing up, that did not go to college, and they're doing great. They're doing great financially. They're doing great with their families. But there's something that you learn from a college experience that you do not learn from a work experience. I think the leadership, the ability to engage with people who look different than you, from different places, even at a homogenous institution where there's like a Spelman or a Virginia State University, an all women's institution like Spelman, you still have diversity. You still have diversity at our HBCUs, the students from other countries, different walks of life, different religious beliefs, different orientations. So to me, there's never everyone's the same. And so I think that it's important. It's so important to expose our youth to the collegiate experience. There's this new push for social mobility. Well, what schools are innately equipped with social mobility than the HBCU? I mean, think about it in terms of exposure, resources, moving someone from this space to this space and having that nurturing environment. I mean, you can't compare to that. And that's why you see such a large percentage of those professionals who are killing the game are products of HBCUs. I mean, it's just a different experience that you get from that. So that's why health and Woodson Associates and Jame'l and all these things that we're doing to really engage and empower are so important. And so I would not trade my education in college for anything. For those youth who are watching or who will watch later, parents, make sure you send your students this clip. So I'm Dr. Hodges, and I own Jame'l, and I'm a member of a fraternity, and I have my doctorate, and I'm a parent. But when I was in high school, my school counselor told me that I was not college material. And so I didn't go to school in August like everybody else. When I was growing up in Long Island, New York, I went to Kopek High School. Shout out to the Kopek Eagles. I remember my guidance counselor, the office had a glass outlay outside the office of glass. And every person who got accepted to a college had a pennant that would hang from that space. So you would see Fredonia and SUNY Albany and Albany State and all of these big Duke and all these big Ivy League and PWIs. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go to those schools. I'm not smart. They don't think that I'm good enough. They said I'm not college material. And so I'm going to work at Favor Shoes at the Sunrise Mall and try to make things work and stay at home. Well, my Aunt Deborah is a graduate of FAMU in the late 80s, early 80s. My grandmother attended North Carolina Central in a long time ago. And so I knew that I had the HBCU education in my family, but I was still first gen. Because, first gen is in terms of your immediate family.
Right.
And so my mother and father definitely went to school, but they fell in love and got married and left college. They left Farmingdale Community College in Long Island. And so for me, I didn't go to college. For an entire semester, I sat and battled with myself if I was good enough. I applied. I got letters back saying that you are a conditional admit. And when you're a kid at 17 and someone's telling you that's getting paid to lead you, a counselor, that you're not good enough, you start believing that. And I believed it and didn't go to school. Until my friend, rest in peace, Jason Ward, went on to Virginia State University and Melinda Batts. Those are two of my high school friends, and Damon Dudley and Sherrod Bird. And so a group of my friends wanted to have this HBCU experience because in Long Island, there was the HBCU tour. And that tour really exposed the youth in our community to what the possibilities of an HBCU, what it could look like for you. I didn't go, but I did go to homecoming. I went to homecoming at Virginia State University in '93. Virginia State had something like a bring your friends to school day, family weekend kind of thing. And so Jason invited me, and I went down there on the Greyhound bus, froze my tail off on that bus. And when I saw the band and the music and the beautiful people and just the energy, and just the energy and the Greeks and the university president walking around, driving on a cart, like, hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I thought, this is like an educational family reunion. Like, what is this? And so I applied right then and there, got into Virginia State, attended school in January, had my cohort of about 23 people. We knew we were different because we all had the orange folder that no one else was carrying around. Other freshmen had a blue one. But for us, right. But, it was what I needed because I was already intimidated. And so to start in January and have a small cohort of only 20-something people, I know who they are to this day: Fatima, Kelly, Ronnie, Brian. It was a core group of us that were together. My roommate was a 22-year-old military guy. I'm 17. So I'm like, it was crazy. Room was like this big. And so, you what happens after that. And so my life just excelled. I'm pledging my fraternity, getting involved in social organizations, mentorship groups, becoming Mr. Trojan, well, now Mr. VSU. That would never have happened for me had I not gone to college. That would never have happened to me. And so going to college, for me, as a person who was not prepared, it really changed me in terms of social mobility. It really changed me and motivated me to go on to get my master's and my doctorate. My friends who left and went to some of the other institutions don't have doctorates, And so there's something to say about that space that happened at an HBCU, specifically at Virginia State University, that was so powerful and impactful for me. And so I want to package it up and send it to everybody, that every student of color, every student, especially every Black male that we know, to really encourage them to go to an HBCU. I wish we could just box it up and send it like Stitch Fix, like a box, and just send it out and say, open this box and let's go. I wish I could do that. And so to me, Jame'l really is that box that I want to provide to each student to say welcome. Let's get it. Let's get this thing moving. Let's be uncomfortable and learn and engage. And that's why the funding and the support and giving back as alumni is so important, because students and families can always afford the education. And so that's a long answer. I'm passionate about this. So yeah, that's my response. My long response.
I don't mind the long response. We have very similar backgrounds. So I went to an academic high school in Detroit. And when it was time for college, because we're academic magnet school, most of the colleges in the state came to the school, but your counselor would have to recommend for you to go meet with the people. I was never recommended.
Right.
And then when I was ready to apply, literally my guidance counselor, we didn't have we had guidance counselors, but we had a person that was over college admissions and applications. She refused to submit mine. And she told me I was not college material and that I should consider trade school. I was like, first of all, that's not going to go with my family because my mother has like 5 degrees. So I can't go to her and be like, I'm applying to trade school. Nothing against trade school, but that wasn't something I wanted to do. So my godmother, who's a choir director, Nina Scott, she did my application and submitted to Morehouse for me. But if she had not taken that extra step, which she took with a lot of her students, I probably wouldn't have gone to college. I don't know what I'd be doing now, because that, as you said, that experience provided me with so many opportunities. I went to Russia, Poland, Bermuda. I sung in the Olympics. This is stuff that Black people from Detroit are not supposed to be doing.
I get it.
And so I think it's important that the point that you bring up also is that homecomings are not just parties. When we allow those young people to experience that culture growing up from the youngest ages all the way through high school, they are more inclined to see this environment as somewhere that they can be and succeed. And I think often people just focus on the partying because, we don't want to put the workshops on the videos because, most people are not coming for the workshops. But there
Right.
are other things that happen at homecoming.
Yes.
And homecoming, you know, is huge. I mean, we're right now struggling because none of our schools are really having them. And I
I,
don't know how this is going to work. And this better be the only year of this.
I'm praying it will. Well, I have a shameless plug to make. I actually choreographed the first ever virtual Unity Step for Thurgood Marshall College Fund's virtual homecoming. So it's going to be an entire day of activities and performances. There's Terrence J and Brandy are going to be Brandy from Brandy Lee, I think her last name is, but she's going to be they're going to be the host of the actual day of leadership and experiences. And so people who didn't go to HBCU, you get to tune in right there and see this experience on October 25th. Go to www.tmcf.org/rise, RISE. And so you're right. Homecomings are more than a party. It's a family reunion. It's an exposure to a beautiful educational culture. It's hope for people who may not feel that they can do it by seeing people who look like themselves, young Black boys who never had a Black professor or a Black teacher get to come to an institution and see coaches and professors and Greeks and alumni and SGA members and campus kings walking around with sashes and crowns and, and seeing youth at the food trucks. Even that exposure is so important to see Black excellence. And so it's not just a party. It's definitely not just a party. It's an experience. It's an experience that can change someone's life as it did mine. Virginia State homecoming of 93, of 92 changed my life. It made me want to go to college. And it wasn't the party. In fact, it was the go to school, go to class day. I sat in the classroom with Jason Ward. I went to his freshman studies class. They allowed me to come in there. And it was an amazing, and I thought to myself, this is the conversation in college. This is way more fun than what we talked about a few months ago in high school. I mean, they're asking people their opinions and what they experienced over the weekend and how they feel about homecoming and Devin. It just felt like a safe space for me where I could really just be myself. And I think that's what I want people to really understand. Sending your child to a homecoming or HBCU tour, an orientation session, a shadow day, all those things matter. They matter so much. So, yeah.
And I think I know. Well, I went to school a little while ago, so homecoming was not then what it is now. I think it's funny when I go to Morehouse's homecoming now. They blocked off the streets and they have all these tents. It's like I've gone to like some kind of street fair in New York.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a much bigger event.
I love it. I've been to your homecoming before recently. It was amazing.
Yeah, usually for the last few years, I have been working and unable to come. So the last year I was able to go, and I was like, ooh, I've been missing. I mean, they had the whole bar set up in the middle of the street. But what was also empowering for me is that there were young males there who didn't feel out of place. There were young ladies there who didn't feel out of place. And I know when I mentor or have workshops or things with a lot of high school students, their main thing is that they don't feel like they are doing what they need to do in those spaces. That they sometimes feel ostracized, or like your experience, or there are people who don't potentially mean harm, but discourage them from their dreams.
Yeah.
And so when you go to these homecomings and you're like 2 or 3 or 4, depending on school, 10,000 people who have college degrees, who are successful, but who are also normal people.
And having fun and engaging and reflecting on experiences and introducing their children to their classmates' children and to their professors. I mean, I brought my son to homecoming almost every year of his life. There was no question that he did not want to go to an HBCU. He chose Virginia State. And so just seeing how his life was so much more seamless than mine with this college attendance, with going to school, there was no question. I didn't know what a FAFSA form was in 12th grade. I didn't know what a loan versus a grant was.
Mm-mm.
I didn't know about, all those scholarship opportunities. I didn't know about Thurgood Marshall. I didn't know about any of that stuff. Inroads. I didn't know about any of those things. The Honda All-Star Challenge, Honda Campus All-Star Challenge. When I got to school, I did all those things. I mean, all those things. You don't know about that in your high school. And shame on our K through 12 spaces that don't promote these experiences. And that's to answer your question about what we do to help Black males, help students of color. Getting brochures and information, looking at websites, talking to people like you and I and our leaders in other institutions who are out there. This is information that we need to make sure that people know about. You know how many students don't go to school because they think they can't afford it? They don't know about the grant scholarships that are out there. You have scholarship firms that are begging to give money away at the time.
And annually are not giving it away. And I mean, case in point, the UNCF has a lot of scholarship money that people don't utilize annually, and they just keep rolling it over and rolling it over. So there are options for funding. Julian Legg said Dr. Hodges, apparently you know him. And Amber, who we both know from health, said that we are phenomenal people.
Amber!
Love you both. You're such amazing leaders in the HBCU space. And Dr. Pickett even acknowledged that his HBCU experience changed his life.
That's powerful. Amber Amber doesn't like when I have unique T-shirts, so she may be hating on my Jame'l Hodges shirt today. I know she's laughing right now.
Well, I don't think she'll mind that one as long as it's not black and gold with some letters across the front.
Well, my cohort for health, we had our own shirts made, Greater Ada, and she was like, "Really, y'all?"
You all did quite a bit. And for those who don't know, we're mentioning health. The Health is the Higher Education Leadership Foundation. It was founded by Dr. Williams, who's at Southern, Dr. Pinkert, who's at Wilberforce, and Dr. Felton, who is the president of Wiley. And it is, the short answer is, it is a training institute for people who want to be important leaders in the HBCU space. It was a lot more.
The game changer. Shout out to Dr. Felton and Dr. Williams and all of them. I mean, I've had more intimate contact, support, and assistance and leadership in my short time as being a health person or a health alum than I have from going to decades of national conferences with the same type of intent. And so that's another plug for Dr. Felton and Dr. Williams, Dr. Pinkard. I mean, they're phenomenal leaders. They mean what they say what they mean. And it's been an amazing family space to be a part of, to grow together. I wouldn't have met you had it not been for health or Amber. Right. I mean, we're truly a family. And so it's a blessing. It's a smaller version of the HBCU experience. It really is. So the light net is so important.
And Rashawn Bailey says her health experience was amazing. Sam Hinton said, "Yeah, Ada, y'all did too much."
Don't hate on Greater Ada now. Shout out to Greater Ada. I love y'all. I know.
Well, they had, those of us who were before you to really, make the experience something you all understand. So, we did a lot of groundwork.
And we respect and love each one of y'all. But our t-shirts were banging though.
You like a good t-shirt. But, it's interesting, when I think about health, at that time, I was considering leaving higher ed. It's a lot. And for those who do not know, working in higher ed is a calling. Because in most cases, our public school teachers make more than us and work significantly less hours. When I go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and then it's like 11:30 at night and we have student events and things, and I can't tell the students I'm not coming, and everybody else is at home with their families and I'm sitting in my office at 11:45 p.m. because their event doesn't end until 12 and, they want to see you there. So it is really a calling.
It is.
And, unfortunately, many schools, and then not just HBCUs, but a lot of smaller institutions are underfunded. And so the work that happens on these campuses with some limitations, I'm often amazed. I'm amazed with schools like, Fisk, that is a small, intimate campus, but the impact they've had on the country since their founding is just amazing.
Yes.
I mean, So, like Dr. Hodges is saying, HBCUs, I try to push all my students to HBCUs. But contrary to public, there is an HBCU for everyone. If you like huge schools, there's like North Carolina A&T's and Morgan. If you like smaller schools, we do have HBCUs of like 300 to 500 students.
Yeah.
So, and this misconception that if you go to HBCU, people won't take you seriously or they don't have this and that, those are lies.
It's a lie, because when I went to Florida State, I was well more prepared than my cohort. When we had assignments due, I came with a suit on and I was ready to present. I wasn't coming to class with flip-flops on and t-shirts, and I'm not generalizing. My experience was that I was well more prepared than my counterparts on different levels, not academically only, but just preparedness. You're not walking to class 15 minutes late at an HBCU and not being checked. At least in my day at State, you would do that. And if you came more than 5 minutes late, you were early for the next class. You might as well just leave and get somebody to give you your notes. And I think that tough love, that nurturing, that support, those are experiences you have to learn so that when you go to work, you can't be 5 minutes late on an assignment or a project. Those things matter. They're not just being mean. They're preparing you for the real world. You're not just a number. You are a person. And professors use unique teaching skills to engage with each student. The faculty staff student ratio is less. It's more intimate. And so I agree with you. I was never in class, other than freshman assembly, I was never in class with more than 25, 30 people.
Right.
Never in 4 years. And then to go to an event and to compete for Mr. Trojan or Mr. VSU, or to be running literally in my Virginia State uniform and see my professor on the side screaming, "Let's go, Hodges!" What? Seeing the dean of students in the front row and my advisor for my fraternity and my mentorship group in the front row screaming at me as I'm doing my poem for the Mr. VSU pageant. That's family. It's beyond the classroom experience. It's beyond the classroom. And so to me, and that's what student affairs should be, no matter where you are, whether you're at an HBCU or not, you should have that experience. I can't see the comments and I don't want to mess this up. So I see you reading. So if you can tell me what they're saying, I'll be sure.
I will, because I haven't quite figured out how to get the comments so I can go across the screen.
Yeah,
we're going to get there.
Okay.
DeAndre Pickens said it was great to have people like you brothers in higher ed spaces. He works in K-12 and he does a lot for K-12. He said it makes the work they do in K-12 continual. And then Sam Hinton said the professors hecked you for being late or told you to go back to your room.
Go back to your room and when you come back, be early.
Well, at Morehouse, most of our professors just lock us out. And then look through the door and see you stand there and continue teaching.
We had Dr. Mack for the English majors, y'all know, he would stand by the door, and if you came in after his 5-minute period, he would say, "Thank you for coming. You are early for next class," and close the door, and you would leave. And if you were smart, it wouldn't happen more than once or twice.
Right. And the thing is too, I tell students all the time, you're paying for this.
You're paying for it, and
why would you be paying? Yeah, and they're prepared. So why would you be paying and then not getting what you paid for?
Yes.
And so
you couldn't text somebody and say, "I'm running 5 minutes late." Class could be outside. You may meet up at 8:05 and go to the football field and talk outside in the sun. So if you're late, you don't know that. We couldn't text in 90.
No. I was telling someone the other day, I say, when I was still at that age, I had dial-up internet, and my roommates couldn't get on the phone if I was on the internet.
That's right.
They're like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, this Wi-Fi and all these high-speed connections." We didn't have and I had a cell phone, so people thought I had lots of money. Because back then everyone didn't even have cell phones.
Oh,
as my mother said when I got my first pager, she was like, "Are you selling drugs?"
Oh Lord.
Because her generation, regular people did not need to be contacted outside their homes.
Right. Are you a private investigator? We didn't need that. We had calls. We would be in line for an hour waiting in our residence hall in Williams Hall to get on the phone, the old school phone, like with the wire and typing in a calling card number to call home to New York. And you knew you couldn't be on the phone long. You had because the guys behind you be like, "Yo, come on, bro. It's been 5 minutes." Hey ma, hey dad, love you. All right, so and so's next. It was that. It's, parents speaking up for the students and contacting the university with issues and
it was funny. Like the thing I appreciate about Morehouse, I found it challenging when I was there, but they taught us how to handle our business
on your own.
Yeah, like there were administrators who wouldn't talk to parents. Like we don't really talk to your parents. Your parents are not on your fur, but I can't talk to them anyway. You need to handle your business yourself. And that has really carried through for my professional career and even through schooling after that, because, I know how to get things done myself and I don't have to worry about it. And that's one of those skills that you were talking about, those extra things that you learn. I would have known that coming out of high school at 18.
Right. And we didn't know it when we got to school either. It's trial and error. You learn that if you get to the financial aid line at 7 a.m., an hour before they open, then you're going to be better off than getting there at 12 p.m. when everyone's already there. Those skills that you learn about waiting in line and not wanting to have that same experience, you start thinking outside the box. Okay, how can I navigate this? Maybe I need to shake the hand of the person who I'm speaking to. Maybe I need to say, hello, how are you doing today? Maybe I should bring her some bottled water. I don't know. I mean, it teaches you how to network and how to strategize. So those things, even though I hated it then, those are building blocks.
I hated it. When I tell you I hated it, because I will never forget, there was one morning and I had only overslept by like 4 minutes. And I tried to run to that class, and that was an 8 o'clock class. I never took another 8 o'clock class.
I know, you learned that.
It was 8:06. And the teacher was closing the door in my face. And I'm like, it's only 1 minute. She was like, it's 6 minutes, and we have class again on Wednesday. And she was going to close that door and pretend to teach her class.
Yeah, because think about it. She's prepared for you. She's there early. So now you come at 8:06 because it's on time for you. But you're putting her 6 minutes behind her schedule. She got to repeat information now again. You missed 5 minutes of a conversation. Other people are being distracted because of you. I mean, I get it now. I get it.
I do too. And it is a distraction when people come in a room late, because no matter what you're doing or how engaging, everyone stops to look to see who's coming in the door, including the teacher. So you have just disrupted the whole atmosphere that we have set for education.
Yes.
Your frat brother, who's a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Brandon Cash, said to be early is on time, to be on time is late, and to be late is unacceptable.
I see you, Brandon. What's up, Brandon? That's right. We learned that a long time ago.
We got all these people, all these doctors on here. Dr. Dixon's on here too.
It's good.
Okay.
Look at this later and see who's chiming in. I'm excited about this.
Spread
the word, get people to join in. We're having some good conversations here.
I have, as I've gotten older, appreciated things that I was forced to endure in my undergrad experience. I had, none of my siblings ever lived with me. Like, they were all older, and even my younger siblings didn't live with us. And so when I got to college and had to share a space with someone, and I mean like share a cube, and I'm like, this is just not gonna work. But even in that, I learned how to really deal with people whether I like them or not. So there were lots of experiences that were learned outside of the classroom that have helped me be successful. Now I can be in working relationships, or I can be in meetings or different things with people who I don't care for and be just as productive.
And say good morning.
Be polite, speak to them. We can get the work done. But I know that when that work day is over, there's no more connection. And that is not something I had in high school, because you only hung around with your friends.
Yeah.
You were never really forced to experience anyone if you didn't want to.
Right.
So when I got to college and, there were group assignments, and everybody knows I hate group assignments, just I hate. But, you had to work with people you didn't know. And so those skills are critical for success, because when you get in the work environment, you don't know who else works at the company. You don't know who they might hire. And so those experiences really helped me be a really good administrator, as a matter of fact, because you know firsthand as well. We don't know the personal backgrounds or the personalities of the students before they get there. And sometimes they're challenged.
Oh, sometimes.
They're challenged.
Yeah, definitely.
Dr. Pickett has a question. Is there a quiz or survey created that would help students navigate where the best fit is as an HBCU major for the students to take?
That's a good question. I know there's a Virginia State alum that runs the HBCU app, this new virtual or technological system to educate students about the application process. And so I want to say that is a part of that. I think that definitely is a part of that.
I know for majors, there is a questionnaire, and we use it. Our director of career services at Payne used it, and I'll look that up and I'll post it on social media. But there was a quiz that they took that helped them figure out career paths or things they want to study. I am not personally aware of any survey that would help somebody determine an HBCU, but like Dr. Hodges said, his company does that, my company does that, and we can certainly assist any student if they reach out to one of us, for guidance. We have access not just to the school we've attended, but to an entire network. So feel free to reach out. Kelly Dixon, Dr. Kelly Dixon from North Carolina A&T said, I was talking to one of my black male mentees this week, and he asked, why aren't administrators and professors as transparent and free to talk with students like me? Thoughts on having real conversation with students beyond the classroom and programs we offer to students.
Yeah, that's so important. I thank you for that question and for that statement. And thank you for being that person for the students who's authentic and leaving the office to talk to them. That's where it happens. That's why the residence life space is so important, residence halls, and having professionals in those spaces and student leaders to really be trained. Another plug for Jame'l Hodges. If you need RA training, let me know. Because being an RA and being an RLC or RC, a coordinator in the residence hall, is more than just letting people walk in and out of a building. It's more than just cleaning up vomit and swiping cards and knocking on doors. It's engagement. It's thinking about what students aren't going to class in my residence hall. I'm talking about the RAs. Forget about the professionals. As a RA, as a student leader, a peer, my RAs at schools I've worked at have been trained to know the culture of their building. So if Jamel's not going to class, if I'm an RA, I should know that 4 or 5 people have not left their room to go to class at all. And so a true RA, and being trained to think that way, not that it's just a job, but this is a serious leadership role, a leadership experience. I think that changes the game. And so yes, having faculty and staff do presentations in the residence halls in that space where they're comfortable, having sororities come in and do pro talks and fraternities do talks in the residence halls, those things are important. But also for faculty and staff, I think it's also important for office hours too, because everything can't be to the comfort of the student. We have to also get them to acquiesce to the system and the culture or the structure that's been prepared for them. So I think it's twofold, but I think office hours are important. In a post office hours, you have to be there for the office hours. And so I think those things are so important. It's a different day, different age. Students are much more vocal and authentic about their feelings than my generation was, and I think they are with their parents as well. And so because they are so empowered to kind of speak their mind, they appreciate conversations outside the classroom, outside the office a lot more. So yes, that's a great point to make. It takes time to get to that space. It does take time to get to that space, but it's important.
And I think, just to be totally transparent, sometimes administrators and professors don't have those conversations because being that vulnerable could be seen by some as weakness. Yeah. I never was that person. I'm just kind of the same person all the time. So, I would share my health challenges. My health challenges with my students. I would share with them things I've overcome throughout my life and career, because that helped them to understand that what they were going through was not unique just to them.
Right.
And I think, I have really been inspired by some professors. Dr. Baxter, for instance, who is at Payne, some students think she's hard, but she is just as caring as she is hard. And I have often watched her have those kinds of conversations with her students. And so there are professors and administrators across the country, but then there's also a thin line. I had one supervisor who told me that I was too close to my students, and you need to deal with all the students fully at an arm's length, and they never should interact with you. And whereas I do understand that there's a certain level of professional distance, we ain't chilling and you're not in my house and all these types of things.
Yeah.
There has to, for successful mentorship, at some point be a level where you can have an honest conversation with people.
Yeah, I agree. It has to be appropriate. Like, I'm not going to tell, you don't tell students all your business, but I think in ways in which you can express to them similarities and or relative experiences where they feel that they can, because that kind of takes the wall down of judgment. When students know that they can speak to you, that you trust, you're not judging them. Sometimes they don't need an answer. They just want an ear. They don't need an answer. Sometimes they just want someone to talk to. And they don't always feel comfortable talking to their families about experiences. And so I think students tell me things that they don't tell their parents. You have to keep that to yourself, of course. But I think those things are important. I mean, it's all about engagement. Engagement equals retention. Retention equals graduation. Graduation equals success and alumni giving. I mean, you think about that, and then you bring somebody else in. You recruit somebody. You wear your college T-shirt, your health T-shirt, your Jame'l Hodges T-shirt, your Wilson Associate T-shirt, and that's branding and marketing. And people want to have those same experiences. If you're a great, the young lady mentioned in the chat, if you are that professor or that faculty member that speaks to students and gives that encouragement, that's a commercial. They're talking about you, and you're going to have many more students come to you because of that. And so I encourage you to talk to your colleagues about how it's working for you and how it works for the students. Encourage that. The other thing with students is that they can see when you're not being authentic. And so those of us who are authentically us and can speak to students and model the way, but still be cool, but not be that cool, but still lead and still check when we need to. That's the balance that you were talking about earlier with this calling and this work that we do. When you're up until 2 a.m. at an event, at a social or a program or a rally or a protest, and then the next day could be campus cleanup at 6 a.m. and you don't have us at 15, so you're gonna be right there, right? And then there's people, and then it's like, oh, Doc, can you come up? Happens. And imagine what college presidents are doing. I mean, look at them and VPs. I mean, so we're built for this. I know you're built for it. We went through it at Morehouse and Virginia State, which was why the experiences in college are so important. It prepares you for a life of leadership and service. And so I think those things are important. I watched my aunt Deborah, who I told you went to FAMU, working in student activities when I was in middle school. Had no idea that I would go to school and do the same thing as her. And it's crazy, but she exposed me to her job. On weekends, she worked at FIT in New York. My cousins and I would go to her events, her fashion shows, her programs. We were in them sometimes as little kids. She exposed us to that. And so I think that exposure is so important so that these experiences don't feel foreign for people.
So 2 things. I want to just commend Dr. K. I consider her a friend and a colleague. But if there are Black male students on your campus coming to you and they feel comfortable sharing those things with a woman, which is not something we do regularly, that is very amazing. And that just speaks to the impact that you have on a regular basis with your students, because we're closed off with other males, and we certainly in general are not vulnerable with females. So that speaks volumes. The other thing is, we have a question from Dr. Pickett. What is your take on white students interested in engaging in the HBCU experience, and are we required to be inclusive?
Well, I think that we are oftentimes forced to be in spaces that don't look like us.
Mm-hmm.
Time that a student wants to experience that, releasing their privilege, I think it's a positive thing. I think it's great for everyone to be uncomfortable in a space. And so I think that's important. I think inclusivity is important. I think we are, in a sense, forced to be inclusive, because we don't want to be hypocritical and then be the privileged space, and not provide that exposure. I don't think we have to be commercialized and inappropriately. What's the word I want to use? I don't think we need. We're not a fad. So I know what you're getting at with that, and so I think hopefully you get my response. But I do think inclusivity is important, and I commend students who are not of color to attend a space that makes them uncomfortable. I think it's important, and I think that's that's important.
And I think to elaborate on what you just said, as long as the understanding is they're coming to this institution, and not that the institution is going to adjust and change for their comfort level.
Yeah.
For instance, one year the valedictorian at Morehouse was Caucasian. There are, contrary to popular belief, everyone at HBCUs are not Black.
Yeah.
And especially our tier 1 research institutions have very diverse populations.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that at its core, it's a historically Black college or university, and that is going to be ingrained. So you might be taking classes you won't take at other places, like African-American history, like African-American psychology. So you just need to understand that the same way as Dr. Hodges said, when we go to PWIs, they don't shift the curriculum or the school's mission and vision because I'm there and I'm Black.
Right. I think that's important to know, though. I think it's important to understand the space that student has. Even though they may be a low SES, a low income, or first-gen student, they still have privilege. And so they need to understand that. I think that's important to come into the door, understanding that there's not going to be a white student union at an HBCU for students who are not Black, because that would be counterproductive. It's different than us going to a PWI that was not created for us. That was
right.
So I think those things are different. So I think you said don't come to an HBCU think we're going to have, that. I think that would not be a realistic expectation. But to those who truly want to experience and learn about the culture and be challenged outside their comfort zone, I say I'm all for it. I think it's amazing.
Dr. Hicks, who is at Kentucky State, we actually went to high school together. She says, how can we get more alumni to obtain higher ed degrees and come back and teach at our HBCUs? I think this will ensure the legacy and pride in our faculty for our HBCU culture and future students.
I agree with that. I think that we have to tell our story. We have to have these kind of conversations where we're talking about our experiences. We have to promote our experiences to our colleagues, and we have to talk about it. We have to write books and articles and do podcasts and kind of meet people where they are today. We have to unleash the hidden. I think we have to unhide this experience. And so that's a great question.
and I think also there are some adjustments that our institutions need to make. It is hard, for instance, to encourage somebody who has a PhD in chemistry to come and work for $35,000 a year with limited resources. And so I think two things need to happen. Our institutions need resources, and unfortunately, most of our alumni don't give at the level they could, which would help. Our schools are traditionally, underfunded on the federal, state, and local level. And so making some adjustments in those areas would help, because I know, for instance, I have several friends who went to HBCUs who have terminal degrees, but whose argument always is, if I came back to an HBCU, then I would not make, what I make. Like one of my friends, his salary is $125,000 a year. It is hard for me to encourage those people who might not be like you and I, who are just passionate about the work. And we want a salary that's livable, but that's not our focus. It's much harder to make that sale to people like in STEM areas and whatnot, who know that if they went to even if it was a tier 1 HBCU like a Morgan, that have a substantial salary a budget for research. You know, they're going to have TAs and
Yeah.
all of these things support their work. So for them to come back to a smaller school is a challenge. And a lot of people are just discouraged from getting doctorates because those of us who do it make sure everybody knows it is not an enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work.
But I think another response to her, I think that was a phenomenal question. I agree with you in terms of the salary and the equity. But I also believe that you don't have to work at an HBCU or work in the space to provide support and education for the space. I mean, you can have your 6-figure salary at a PWI, but still come to the campus and be a speaker at an HBCU or go into the classroom. You know, there's ways we can still navigate the environment and still have our voices be heard and let students see us, because we have to still care about the students. And so, look, make the money. I'm not saying I'm making it, because I like a good salary too. And when I was at the PWI, is when I created Jame'l Hodges. And I mentioned that earlier. I still was going and doing, and I wasn't even getting paid for Jame'l Hodges then. I was just showing up and locally speaking to students because I was excited about it. And that's how Jame'l Hodges grew to be this thing where people are actually hiring me to come and be a consultant for their institution. So I didn't look at it as a moneymaker. I looked at it as a way to give back, to be able to meet students who look like me. And be able to tell my story about don't you ever let somebody tell you you can't succeed. You have within yourself leadership innately, and so don't ever let someone tell you what you can't do. You do what you can do, and you expose yourself to things that are different than what you're used to, and you can grow. And so for me, it's almost like the voting, like talking about voting. I mean, it's the same type of thing. You know, you don't have to work for the government, you know, or work in politics to encourage people to vote. And so using social media, using our Facebook, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, telling our HBCU story, telling our experiences, going to volunteer on the campuses and speak to students during freshman assembly, going for alumni day, family day, all those things matter. Doing a podcast with you, a live feed, talking about our experiences. Someone's going to watch this that was told by their school counselor that they weren't good enough and say, wow, both of them were told that, and I'm over here sulking. Most of us were told that. I remember in health, they asked that question, and we all raised our hands. How many of you men were told you weren't college material? I mean, that's what happens, unfortunately, until we get in those spaces. And so if we're not in those spaces, even if it's volunteerism, then we're doing a disservice to our community.
I think, you know, and both of us have gone to PWIs and HCU. I think the difference for me really was when I was at Morehouse, my color was not an issue. I didn't have to speak for my people all the time. That was just not an issue because I was at a school and most people look like me. And I was like, oh. So then what shifted in my mind was not explaining who I am or representing, you know, Black people, but it was like, oh, I have to be excellent because all these people around me are trying to do the same thing.
You gotta come with it. I
yeah, exactly.
I came to Virginia State with the individual braids, like the Busta Rhymes braids in the 90s, my baseball cap and a hole on the top, my Timbs with every outfit, even in the summertime, and my cross colors and Carl Kanai. That's what I rocked every day. I got to state and I saw brothers in loafers and like leather bags and waves and lineups. And I saw how they were being responded to by the ladies and the faculty and staff. I came back with no hair, waves, you know, tight. People were like, are you online? I'm like, what's that? You know, and I was only a second semester student, but I came back different because of the expectation. The students at Virginia State were killing it, and it was cool to be smart.
Right.
It was cool to be a leader. It was cool to be in class and impress your professor. It was cool to wear a suit. It was cool seeing every Monday, seeing the certain organizations dress up and then seeing the ladies dress up. I mean, literally, that was the culture. Each day, a different Greek organization had to wore their shirt and ties and their suits. I mean, all the alphas on Monday, all the kappas on Tuesday, all the Qs on Friday. I mean, and then they flip it, and then everyone's wearing paraphernalia on another day. It just was like, well, how do I get in this? Like, how do I I want to be important like that. I want to look like them. And it's not always about Greek. Don't get me wrong. It's just about the leadership and the expectation of being in something that's bigger than yourself.
I know. It was so funny for me because I had never been around that many black males who were smart. You know, because I was always in the smart people group. So like I went to a Catholic 99.9% Caucasian middle school. And I was like the one black person that was, you know, they divide all of us based on academic ability. You know, the research now says you should not do that with young people, so I'm not promoting that. But you know, I was always the one black person in the smart group. Now, ironically, you know, as I have become a little more conscious of my blackness, I have issues with the fact that top group was called the white group. But that's neither here nor there. But it creates you a certain level. When I got to Morehouse and I saw those business students wearing those suits every day and it was like 104 degrees, I was like, okay. So
that smile like it's normal. No one's complaining, right? That's what I loved about it. I was like, this is what we do. This is normal.
And you know, for people who don't know about the AUC, you go to a school, but you can go to classes at the other schools. And so to see like the girls from Spelman and Clark come on our campus and like 4-inch heels and suits, and I'm like, okay. And then you know, every Friday, Spelman had Market Friday, so you know, you had to be extra on point. But it just created in me a different view.
Don't come out there looking crazy on Market Wednesday or Courtyard Tuesday or whatever it may be, whatever the school is. We all got it. You gotta be on point.
Then to just have other experiences, like we had Crown Forum, and to have these national leaders come and talk to us who we knew could be anywhere else.
That's right.
It was just like, okay, so this is for real. Dr. Dixon, Dr. K, also said, and I do want to bring that up, she is our NASPA Region 3 HBCU director, and she has a webinar series going on now with various topics for our HBCUs. And so that is great. I have been in Region 3, I guess, my entire professional career, and it's the first time I've seen anything like that. So shout out to her for that. And great point, she wants us to plug the Center for the Study of African American, Study of HBCUs that's now at Virginia Union.
Yes.
Under Dr. Terrell Strayhorn.
Let her know also, she can hear me. I too, about 4 years ago, was on the first HBCU commission to bring in, with NASPA, to bring in HBCUs to the NASPA space. Now, I was working at Tennessee State at the time, and I was shocked that in those meetings and sessions, we had so many alumni from HBCUs who were working at PWIs, but the HBCUs that we attended were not at NASPA. And so I think that's really, really important. I do. And I'm 15 minutes from Terrell Strayhorn here. And so, yes, we definitely want to plug the Center for the Study of African American Males as well. And
he's just, a few weeks ago, he was named Provost of Virginia Union. So congratulations on that. Dr. Robertson also said the alphas at VSU impressed him with their suits, briefcases, and leaders on campus. And their leadership on campus.
That's right. That's Beta Gamma chapter, for those who don't know.
It is so interesting to me that so many of my friends are alphas.
You know, you like to be around greatness.
And Amber says she hopes you're not still wearing your Timbs in the summer. What happened to your volume?
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Say the last part again. Someone said what now?
Amber said not your Timbs in the summer.
I did, with shorts and a wife beater. I was a kid.
Look how far we have come.
Look how far we have come.
So if we move further, let's move to a more serious topic. Recently, there have been a lot of changes in the Department of Education that, you know, with funding, with threats to stop funding, with, you know, the president's recent executive orders surrounding diversity and inclusion work at institutions, to the point that some schools are now just suspending those efforts for fear, I guess, that their funding will dry up by the federal government. What do you think, just on a national education level, about the direction that we have gone and are going in terms of education?
Well, I think that's a service to all to not provide funding for those critical areas of engagement in education. And so I think we have to get with our local legislation and make sure that we're all voting and doing our part. I see on social media so many people who look like us who said in the last election that they weren't going to vote because they didn't like anyone. And so I know you know the difference between not voting and voting now. And so if nothing else, it's time for us to make sure that we vote. And when you mentioned that to me, you reminded me of something that I attended. This is another educational moment, reflection. When I was at Virginia State as a student athlete, we were exposed to a program called the National Youth Sports Program, or NYSP. It was it was a federally funded program that provided leadership like this experience for K through 12 kids in the local community. And so it was called enrichment. So they got to come to campus at the HBCU space. It was a summer camp from 8 a.m. until like 2:30, 3 o'clock p.m. It was run mostly by college athletes. It was a great way for us to make money in the summertime, but also to become leaders. And that program was cut. And so it goes to your question, that program was cut. That program exposed so many youth to a space 5 minutes from their home that they never would have been to, the Town and Gown Partnership. And so cutting those funds from the DOE for education and diversity and inclusion, that's not helping. We need those funds. We need that support. And so for all you rich people out there who are giving money to the college graduates when they graduate and paying their loans, we need funding for this as well. So that's a good question. Thank you for that.
Because of the work I do, I try to stay up on like trends and, the issues that are impacting most of higher ed, but it's specifically our HBCUs. And it concerns me that there seems to be a shift of funding away from our schools. Many people will discuss this recent money that the HBCUs got in this last budget cycle. But we then look at all the schools that need things that are not financial.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to impact a school positively that is not financially based. We have schools that have science programs that are short with equipment. And if we really want to be competitive, then those are areas we have to adjust to. The schools that are successful in those spaces invest heavily in those spaces. I always said when I was at Morehouse, our music department is on the third floor of the liberal arts building, and the world-renowned Morehouse College Glee Club rehearsed in an English lecture hall. But the school realized the importance of those areas, and now they have a performing arts center. But Morehouse invested heavily in science and technology. Mm-hmm. This was before it became, the thing to do. And we used to always wonder, why? But now we understand those people all have doctorates. They are doctors and top research across the country. And so we really want to move our institutions forward. We have to really start looking at some of the things that are not specifically money related that can impact. Because in most of our schools have exceptional faculty.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter how good of a teacher you are if you do not have the best tools with which to teach.
Yeah.
And that goes for student affairs as well. It's hard to do that work when you're understaffed.
Well, I think, and that goes to those who don't work on college campuses. I think what you're talking about is the Institutional Research and Planning Department, like IRAP, like those areas of getting funding and getting corporate sponsorships, working with our career development centers on our college campuses, and then the development office in terms of alumni relations and the development office. Those areas are critical, especially at HBCU. So once again, the institutional research and planning areas, the development areas, alumni relations, and career development centers are some really, really great ways to really push for some of that funding. A lot of corporations and companies want to see us succeed or want to save the day. And so as long as their mission is not inappropriate, it takes that type of level. And you see a lot of HBCUs really focusing on that a lot more now. So I think that's important. I know that I've seen some of our health brothers and sisters who are presidents are working on that. You see most of them are having these centers and these stadiums and these technology centers and these funding, endowments, et cetera, and being granted, which really enhances the institution. So I agree with you.
Two things. Dr. Hinton wants us to make sure we also make people aware of his HBCU Next G organization, which is great. I went to a training in February, a workshop that he did, and the work that they're doing is really amazing for this next generation of college students that, are coming with significant deficiencies, but really still have the potential to be great. Dr. Dixon, so Dr. K, for those people who don't know, is like, an assessment guru. I did an entire podcast with her on assessment, and I was taking notes. And so she just wanted us to, acknowledge the power of assessment. And I think that's something you just touched on.
Yes.
We need to really be doing the research and gathering the data so that when we go to places, we can use tangible data. Shout out to the UNCF for doing that work, to like the fiscal impact of every HBCU that's in the UNCF. And then sharing that information with the schools, because that type of data, you can't knock data.
And that's why I shouted out institutional research and planning. I mean, in my experience at Tennessee State and Virginia State HBCU spaces, those are the departments that I work closely with in terms of getting data, getting information, preparing for SAC COC, looking at, make sure that what we're doing is working, quality assurance, all those things that, learning outcomes, performance outcomes, all those things that so Dr. Dixon, yes, shout out to you and all of those who are out there doing that type of work. And it has to be all of our job. That's another thing I want to say. This new retention and enrollment and these conversations, assessment, retention, that can't just be a department. That has to be everybody. Engagement as well. And so it has to be everybody. And so we have to also redefine what it means to be a leader on a college campus. For all you out there who work on college, especially HBCUs, pull those RAs in to your leadership workshops. It ain't just about SGA and the World Court. Pull those organizational presidents in there with the RAs, so your athletes, your athletic reps from the athletic association on your campuses. That matters. Those students matter as well. I get so frustrated when I see RAs not being included in this conversation, because they are truly student leaders. They're not just working. And so, and that goes back to the assessment and the student information and the student focus groups and their testimonies. You want to find out how a student is doing on campus, you go to their RA and your RCs, the professionals. That's where they are more time. They're in a residence hall more than they're in class. I mean, you're in class, what, 5 hours a day, maybe 6 at the most? You're in your residence hall all day, all night. That's where everything happens. And so that's where a lot of programming, research, networking, engagement, support systems, conversations, education, engagement has to happen. And so, yeah, thank you, Dr. Dixon, for saying that. But I was giving assessment a shout out when I said the IRAP office. So, yeah.
The other thing is, the point you make about RAs, in many situations, they're like the first point of contact when there needs to be an intervention also. Because they, like you said earlier, they notice when students are not going to class. They will notice, if students are not eating. They'll notice if students have shut down.
Yes.
And this generation is coming to college with a lot more visible baggage than we did. Yes. And so the RAs are critical. Before I left Payne, I did the training for the RAs because I understand the importance of their role, not just to residents' life, but, to the division as a whole.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that, I want them to also understand it's okay for them to be human and have a moment too.
Right.
And so I think it's very important that you bring up the point of the RAs being included in things. When I looked at student leaders, I looked at anybody who was a student that was leading. They could be Royal Court, they could be SGA, they could be class officers, they could be RAs, members of the, Student Athletic Advisory Committee, all of those things, because like you just said, the students share more with the students before it gets to us.
And they know about things beforehand. When I was at Tennessee State and Virginia State, I work with the RAs all the time. They always know what's going on. They know who's being harassed. They know who's depressed. They know who's sad. They know who's excited. They know they know everything. And so I think that's just such an important area to really tap into. I will tell Amber, I just saw her Twitter thing. I just I just can't click on it yet because I'm on this.
Uh, Dr. Dixon's agreeing with you that there are assessments beyond a survey. You know, this survey mentality just drives me nuts. But something that she and I discussed when we had our interview, which I want to bring up, was that you should be collecting the data all the time. And we always get, challenged when it's time for accreditation review or when it's time for different reviews or things. But she brought up a very good point. If you are collecting the data consistently, get together should not be that difficult. And I know, I'm speaking for myself, it is challenging when you are struggling to try to meet all the needs to keep the data.
So when I was at Tennessee, my first time really delving into assessment, I think I did it. I just did it informally before. But at Tennessee State, I was actually the chairperson for the Division of Student Affairs Assessment, and so we had an entire university-wide SAC-COC preparation team, and I was the point person for student affairs. Now, talk about jumping into something that you didn't know about. I knew what assessment was, but I'm not going to say I can't do this. I jumped right in there, got around, faculty, athletics, staff, etc. And it was a powerhouse. They created this online portal that Tennessee State used at the time called Compliance Assist. And it was created, it was started by Dr. Peter Nwosu, who was the provost at that time. And he really created a system where we would meet, weekly and then monthly, and every department had to turn in a weekly report to their supervisor. So imagine if you're the VP for Student Affairs, all your directors would do a weekly report. But guess what? If that becomes your culture of doing a weekly report and keeping the data, even if no one else reads it but you, when it comes, then you have a monthly report already done.
Yeah.
Then now you have a 6-month report or a semi-annual report done, and then by the time the year comes, you shouldn't have to go back and look at old handouts and forms and and all those different things. You should really be able to look at your reports. That, to me, I'm sure Dr. Dixon will agree, that is where we have to be, where we're assessing all the time and we're collecting that data, and then we're able to just say, here's what I collected, versus going back and trying to find things from months ago. I'm talking about documentation, keeping all your flyers, keeping student responses, how many attended, what was the success rate of the program, how much money was spent. That's responsibility. That all matters. And that way you're not just programming willy-nilly. And so, yes, she tapped into my assessment passion. So thank you for doing that.
And, shout out to North Carolina A&T, because she is the director of Student Affairs Assessment. I wish I had somebody in my division who was an assessment specialist, because, when you get to the VP level, if somebody doesn't do it on your staff, you end up doing it. And, like you said, my directors, I was very fortunate. They did weekly reports. So when it came time for me to do my cabinet reports, or even my, any other type of evaluation on my board reports and things, I had all the information.
Yeah.
The only thing I had a request from them was that if there was something specific that they wanted me to address in their sections of the report, but because they had been consistently giving me information, it wasn't like I was really pressed. So, a week before, I'd be like, are there any highlights you all need to put? And they could just send it to me, and we were done.
That's right.
Consistency across the board. And even the point you just brought up, that assessment also allows us to strategically use resources. If we have a program, I always tell people, I might like it. The students hate it. If the students are not coming and the staff and all are saying there's no value for the program, then we don't need to keep funding that.
Because it may not, and guess what? Maybe the students don't even like it.
Yeah.
I mean, so yes.
And I was, she also said not only doing your assessments a year out from the SACS visit.
Look, all about that business. All about.
I just, I wish, I, in earlier years and other people just realized that doing that consistently just makes life so much easier. But I was fortunate. My students, most of the students really connected with me, and they would just be honest. Like, they would just come to my office and be like, please don't do that program again, because we
don't like it.
And no one's going to come again. They only came because you made us. And I was like, we don't need to do that. But what we did, which was interesting, like, we had specific students of specific positions that had to do programming. and we found that students would program a lot of things that they felt were important, even like mental health workshops in our counseling department and various things that students would attend. One, because they wanted to come, but two, because their friends were doing it.
They tell you what they want. My boss, my former vice president at Virginia State, Letizia Gambrell Boone, who's also a health alum, she told me students will show you what they need by what they do. So, and I believe that. She always said that students will show you what they need. So, and if it's support system, then they're going to act out. Their conduct. You look at how many, what is the conduct issue that's happening? Well, then we have to create something to kind of to cut that out, right? So if it's arguing or conflict, if that's it, so then we need to do a program on that or some type of education on that. And I think that was so powerful when she said that, because it's true. Students show you, and they also show you what they want through their programming, especially at a school like an HBC where you don't have 25 people working in student activities. Typically, the student leaders is student activities, and you have one director and maybe one staff. But the presidents of the 150 organizations are really student activities.
Yeah.
When they start doing protests and sit-ins and discussions on whatever it may be, that's what they want. They're telling you what they want. So to me, as a director or a coordinator or a RC or a VP, when you start seeing that happen on a campus and it's starting to galvanize towards one thing, that's what they want. And I think that's when you think about the resources that you provide for them, then having something that you want them to have and they're not going to attend. Or finding a way to push what you want onto the program that the students already are trying to do, adding that in there. So.
And, I always ask, okay, you want to do this, but why? Like, why do you want to do this? What is going to be the impact on your colleagues by having this event? If they couldn't answer, we weren't having the event. If they could answer that question, then I was more inclined to support the event because they thought it through. We don't just need to be having stuff to be having stuff.
Not with funding. Not when we need funds, right? We need to do what's going to help students.
So Dr. K also has a question. This is a good question. What are your thoughts on the limited number of HBCU student affairs professionals joining and participating in professional development organizations and submitting program proposals to conferences?
So my thoughts are that I don't know that all of our colleagues know about what the experiences that the resources that. Sorry, I don't think that they all know the resources that we're talking about. I know people who went to health and didn't have funds, and health helped them. So, I think so. My thoughts are that we have to each one teach one. We have to talk about this more. You have to, I'm not sure how this looks, but copying and pasting this story, this conversation to others, having similar conversations with our colleagues about these resources is so important, because a lot of people are being told we don't have travel money, we don't have professional development funds, and so you got to find it on your own. But you can, and you don't have to go away and go be in a hotel or travel to learn. You can. There are webinars, there are conversations, there are group me's, and Facebook pages, Black SAP. I mean, all those different things that we have that provide resources. So kudos to those. Let's talk about, we have on Facebook, we have Black SAP, which is the Black Student Affairs Professionals. There's a group me for everything. There's a group me for Black men in education, Black women in education, Black Greeks in education. It just goes on and on and on. So just like the question was about, how do we get students to know what school they want to go to? Is there any kind of pre-survey? Yeah, it's called social media, because students follow Instagram pages and Facebook. That's why we do this. That's why we do social media, because it connects to students. Same thing with us. Dr. Dixon, I think that's a great question. I think we have to really expose, especially our younger professionals, to these resources, because it's definitely support out there.
And I think the other thing too, often their sheer workload is so overwhelming that I think they get discouraged by submitting proposals and doing a lot of professional development conferences and things. It is a lot. When I was first starting out, I didn't do any of that. I didn't submit to anything because just the bare energy to get my job done was so beyond overwhelming that to do anything else was just a lot. And a lot of schools do not provide funding for the staff if they're not at a certain level. And now I think, because I'm a, an advocate for professional development. Even when I was in the nonprofit sector, that's just something we do. That people below the director level also need professional development. Your coordinators need professional development. Everyone needs professional development. Now, a lot of those people might not be making salaries they can pay for themselves. I went to health, I had to pay myself because the institution at the time was not able to pay for that. But I wanted to go. My president was very supportive of my decision to go. And so I paid for it. But I think a lot of, people are overwhelmed. I know we had significant reductions in staff, which meant that I was doing a lot more work and other people in my department were taking on work. And I know sometimes you just get home and doing a proposal for a conference is so far down. Or I would have these stacks of things I was going to do, all these proposals, the whole stack. And then when I got around to it, the deadlines be passed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I think she also made a good point. Our employers should invest in their employees' professional development. I've talked to colleagues and they're like, well, we don't want to train the people to leave. And there's a quote, and I don't know who it's by, and I usually have my quotes ready, but it just said, you can train them and they may leave, or you cannot train them and they'll stay.
Yes. And I think as a leader, you want people to grow and then move on. That speaks to your leadership. I mean, in our field, it's common to move out to move up. And so I think that's important. You really don't want someone to become stagnant in a position either, though, because it doesn't help the students out at all. And
to not be personally offended if someone who you've invested in decides that they're ready for another opportunity.
I mean, it speaks to your hopefully it speaks to your leadership that the person has been so prepared under your guidance that they're able to move on now. I mean, that's what it's about.
It's the same thing for our students. I tell students all the time, and I got it from David Morrow at Morehouse when I was an undergrad. You're not supposed to come here and stay. You were supposed to come here, get what you need, and leave. Our goal is for you to graduate. My goal is not for you to be here for 15 years because you're just enjoying it. And it's the same thing with staff. I try to empower my staff and do whatever I can so that they do feel fulfilled. And if they decide to leave, I still support them. The best assistant I ever had, and I tell people all the time, wonderful, probably ever in my entire career, no matter where I was working, he was the best. And he was at Payne, and he came to me and said he had decided that he wanted to go to grad school.
Right.
I kept him as long as I could. Yeah. But, the other day he sent me a text, he's finished his master's and he's got this wonderful job at a high school in North Augusta. So, that does speak to your investment in the people that work with and for you. And I think that's important. We need more qualified people across the board at our schools. And if we are producing them, then we know what quality we get.
That's right.
And Dr. K said, I want someone to take my position when I'm ready to advance. I don't want anyone. She said she doesn't want to do assessments when she moves up, though. But that's what you should be. There should be somebody who can do your job in your absence.
Yes.
And so when I left Payne, I had health issues, but that was a hard decision because I love my students. I love what I did. And so it is not easy to make the decisions that are best for you when you know the impact they're going to have on other people.
Right.
But, they've gone on, I tell them all the time, they have gone on without me. I mean, my departure did not what some people think. Everything is just the school is closing because I left. And sometimes people think like that. If you've done your job well, then people should be able to do their jobs upon your departure.
Yeah.
And that's just my 2 cents. People can take it or leave it. So as we wrap up, because I told you it's going to be an hour, and I told you this always happens when I bring you on, that the people start having comments and questions and all, and then it's 11:45.
I know I went by so fast. Thank y'all for all the questions. I hope to meet some of you out there. I can't wait to watch this so I can't see the comments, but I'm gonna respond to y'all if I can, or add you all to Facebook or whatever I can do.
Yeah, and everyone, I'm gonna figure out how to pull these comments over here. We're gonna get there. But
follow Elevate on social media. It's the same exact handle. JAMELEVATE, Jame'lavate.com is my website. Please go there. You'll see the different agencies and institutions that Jame'l Hodges has been able to support and collaborate with. If you need a speaker virtually or in person, please let me know. I would love to. I want to thank you for this opportunity. Instagram and Twitter are the exact same handles as well, just Jame'l Hodges. So.
And if you need to reach out to my company, is Woodson, ASSOC.com. And then my personal website is rwaynewoodson.com. So check them out. Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Dr. K said, oh, shoot, she has at 12 o'clock. So we thank you all, everybody, and hope you will tune in next time. Make sure you reach out to Dr. Hodges for his services. I can personally vouch for his work, which, I don't do often, people. And so I hope to see you all on next time. Thank you and have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you, brother.